Welcome back to Passport to Wealth. I'm your host, Arielle Tucker. Today's guest is Jen Barnett, co-founder of Expatsi, the platform that helps Americans figure out which country fits their life and make a plan to get there. Jen created the Expatsi test, a data-driven assessment that ranks top countries based on the cost of living, healthcare, safety, rights and freedoms, infrastructure, climate, and more, then guides people through next steps like visas, housing, and community. And I know you're working on an app, so we'll be sure to cover your app as well, because that test was kind of like the stage one, and now we're coming out with an app. So that's very exciting. Can't wait to talk about that with you. She's a serial entrepreneur and writer. Jen brings an MBA in marketing and innovation and has helped thousands of aspiring expats through Expatsi's tools, content, and planning sessions. She's been featured in outlets from Forbes to Reuters for her work at demystifying the move abroad process. Welcome, Jen, expat turned expert on a mission to make living abroad achievable, intentional, and aligned with how you actually want to live. Where are you joining us from today, Jen?
Arielle, first of all, what a lovely intro. That made me feel so good. I'm just on cloud nine. I am in Merida, Yucatan, Mexico.
Oh, I am like loving, if you're watching the YouTube version of this, you'll see all the palm trees and the greenery in the background. And if you aren't, oh, is that water? Is that a pool?
Yes, yes.
Oh my gosh.
It's the life. It's the life.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so curious. You are like now such an expert in helping individuals, figure out which country they should move to, explore their options, and then actually create a path for them to move there. How did you start your expat journey? Like, what inspired all of this?
That's a great question. Honestly, I had always wanted to move abroad. Not to get into all the lore, but when I was 6, we had France Week at my little Christian school, and we sat at little makeshift cafes and learned like 6 French words, and I was hooked. I wanted out. I knew I didn't want to be in Birmingham, Alabama anymore. I wanted to go to France. Um, and then when I was 20, I dropped out of grad school on a whim and tried to move to France. And that's when I found out, oh, this is more challenging than I realized. And keep in mind, this is a pre-internet era. So I was really flying blind. So I put that on the
Wait,
back
did you make
burner.
it to France at
I
all?
yeah, I went on a trip. I just
Okay.
I went, dropped all my classes, drove to a travel agent, tried to buy a one-way ticket. She said, okay, let's sit down. And she said it's much cheaper to get a round trip ticket. So I agreed to the round trip ticket, and I did end up going, and I stayed in a hostel. I couldn't even tell you where, and I just walked all over Paris by myself and thought and read books and ate Pop Tarts because I didn't have money for food. So I'd packed Pop Tarts in my bag. Anyway, but you learn like, okay, a lot of people come to me now who are 70 and say, okay, I'm going to go retire to Scotland. And I have to explain to them that they can't just pick up and move to Scotland, that they're not allowed. And so I got that lesson earlier than my clients. So I kind of had that mind for it. Then the next aspect of it, like a lot of people, is political. In 2016, I just was really, really nervous about things that were happening. Coming from Alabama, we it it just is a different experience. And so we started looking. We looked into Canada, specifically at that time, and our thought was that we would go and work, but we didn't pass the express entry test. So we had our first scouting trip there, and the other aspect of it was it didn't feel like home. On paper, it checked every box for what we were looking for in life, but on the ground, we just felt like complete fish out of water, bumpkins. And so we put that on the back burner. And then in 2020, all those same thoughts were happening again because of the election. We didn't feel like it went far enough in the direction we wanted. And then, of course, we were working remote like a lot of people because of the pandemic. And I just thought we could be doing this anywhere. Also, it was very contentious. If you saw the movie over the summer, Eddington, that talks about how contentious the pandemic was in the US, it reminded me a lot of what it was like where we were living. And so
Were you in
we,
Alabama this whole time? You had
oh
stayed?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had gone to grad school in Georgia. I had done some of my career in Tennessee, but I'd never left the South, or even the Southeast. We just started thinking, okay, it's time to make this happen. I don't know. I don't know what life is going to be like. So we did a little retreat, and that's where we sat and listed, and you nailed it. We were like, okay, what do we want for cost of living, healthcare, infrastructure, human rights? What are the things that are important to us? And we wrote all those things down. And then we just started matching countries up. Okay, France gets a point for this one, and so on. And we looked at all 194 countries in the beginning, and made
Oh
the
my gosh.
I know, made the most ridiculous spreadsheet you've ever seen in your life. But that's what became the Expatsi test. So we came up with our top 10, just like what you get when you take the test. And we were going to go visit them over 10 years. And
Wait,
then after
are all 194 countries in the test? No.
they were for the first
Okay.
year. And then now it's 100, it's still 100. And sometimes people write to me and they're like, I wouldn't want to move to such and such place. And I'm like, well, some people do. So just leave it alone. You aren't required to move to the country you get your result. But
It's like a
so,
BuzzFeed test that you have to do.
absolutely. Like imagine that you now have to, well, now you're the carry, so you have to be the carry forever. So um we were going to visit Costa Rica first. And then I came across some guys on TikTok who were living here in Merida. And I was like, look at this place. It looks beautiful and it's affordable. And they had all these things that they loved about living there. So I said, let's go visit there first. We were going to do this over 10 years. And then maybe I'd retire at that point a little early. Brett would keep working remote. This would be a process. And when we came to Merida, I was like, no, let's go now. It's amazing. We loved every single thing about it. And so we both were working remote, and neither of our jobs were going to let us leave the country. So I said, let's take all of this data. We can't be the only people, right? And that's, I think, the difference between me and some other entities out there is that I'm not a big company. I'm just somebody like you who is a little bit ahead of where you are, you know? And so I feel like I'm a friend or a big sister who's helping other people with the info that I pulled together for myself. So we built the quiz in 2022. That's right after we got back from Merida. Just send it to friends and family. But then June 1st, I started running, $20 in Google ads. And then Roe versus Wade was overturned. And all of a sudden, our traffic took off. And I was like, okay, it's time. So I went ahead and left my job and started working on Expatsi full time. Brett kept his job and started working on it the next year. And then we finally got moved about a year and a half ago.
Wow. I love that you went from this is our 10-year plan and we've already made an Excel spreadsheet with 194 countries to we are now moving to Mexico and you did it in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And quit your
Yeah.
job.
Let's see. No, that's too fast. 2022, 2023, 2.5, 2 years
Okay.
and 3 months. But in that time, other people can do it faster than us for sure, especially with my help. And that's a big piece of it. But we had to build the company up big enough to support 2 people. Now, that said, you don't have to earn as much. So I was head of marketing at a software firm, and Brett was a junior developer. He had changed careers during the pandemic. We didn't have to replace our salaries and benefits. We just needed to make $3,000 a month. That's what we need to live on in Mexico for my beautiful home with a pool and healthcare and nails and Pilates and dinner out and so on. So, with the concept of, okay, if we can get $3,000 a month in business, then we can go. That was the goal.
Yeah. And I think like even as a financial planner, I always think about that. Like I care less about what you're earning and much more about what you're spending. So if you're
Smart.
living in a really high cost of living area or city, like you're spending a lot, you have to make a lot, right? But
Right.
that can change. Like if so if you're living in Zurich or New York City or London, you're going to have to earn a lot to live in those cities. But if you're
Mhm.
going to go and retire, maybe we don't have to save as much to replace what you
For
are
sure.
spending now. So I think that's an important point to make. So you've made the move to Mexico. What were like some of those initial shocks? Like you sound like you guys really planned this out really well. So over those 2.5 years, you planned it out, you move. What were the culture shocks that you experienced on the ground?
The funny thing is, and I don't know if it's just that this is such a soft landing or if we're especially adaptable. And I think it's a little bit of both because we are novelty seeking, Brett and I both. But there are little bitty things. I mean, the teensiest. The funniest one is we constantly get the wrong food. like we constantly order the wrong food. Last week we were at a place and Brett went to to get a beer and he came back with an espresso martini. See, also it's
How do you
know. I don't know. And he's too shy to say anything, so he just consumes whatever he's and then after the movies we stopped at the coffee shop and we ended up with he somehow got 3 coffees from the two of us and we just go with it. It's little things like that, but it's surprising how much easier life is here in so many ways. For one thing, in Merida in particular, there are so many like brands and stores you're used to. So it helps you get started. We have a Costco. So I always say on day one,
Oh,
I went and
nice.
got a
Yeah.
rotisserie chicken. And at least I knew we could eat
Yeah.
before I could learn because uh, you have to learn money exchange and metric. So if you go in to buy a pack of chicken breasts, then you have to go, okay, divide this quantity by 2.2. And then when we got here, it was 16.67 pesos to the dollar. So this is not easy math to figure out how much the chicken costs. And when we first came down, we were very, very, we're budget conscious anyway, but we were a very newbie startup. So that sort of math. But on day one, I know that this rotisserie chicken is about $6 and we were off to the races. But in general, it just the thing about being here is the culture is different, but it's so warm and welcoming that it isn't a shock. It's more like a relief or like a warm bath.
Mm.
And then the other things are the same. Now, we don't speak the language. That's important to note. We take Spanish class, but we showed up with nothing you didn't learn from Sesame Street or a menu. Um, and so certainly well, that's why we end up with the wrong orders all the time. But certainly we have to plan if we are going to go and try to solve a complex problem. But there's a lot of English spoken. And then this thing makes all the difference in the world. The fact
Mhm.
that we can use it at any instance. And then the doctors all speak English. So it's not like we have to uh, make those communication leaps when it's in a very critical situation.
Yeah, and I love that you're mentioning that because that's how I feel. Like everyone's like, "Do you speak German?" And I'm like, "I speak restaurant level German. Like I can confidently go into a restaurant and
Yes.
navigate." But don't ask me to like navigate a complex medical issue in
Mhm.
German. Like that's a completely different vocabulary that I would be like, I'm not there yet. So I think that's important to know. The other thing that you mentioned was adaptability. And I just want to highlight that because you are not the first guest to use that word adaptability. And it is such an important skill if you want to go and live in a different country. Because, I've said this before, but like, you are now walking into someone else's home and they do things in a different way. And it's not the same as the US. And so you really have to
Mhm.
be prepared to be a lot more mentally, emotionally flexible
Yes.
than you would than you can sometimes get away with in the US.
Well, some people are very bought into the cultural rules that they follow in
Mm,
the US. There are hierarchies, right, everywhere. And so you have to behave a certain way, look a certain way, all these things. And sometimes, even if you're not in the mainstream, you have a subculture and it has all the same rules. They're just different. So instead of being
mhm.
blonde, you have to have pink hair, or whatever else. And so if you're really bought into those criteria, it can be hard when you go somewhere else because they have their own hierarchy, but they don't care about your rules. They don't
Mhm.
think that you are better because you are XYZ, which you might have worked to attain in the US. For me, I am a very non-construct person. And so for me, it's a delight to be somewhere where I don't know what the constructs are. I want to be polite, right? Like I want to be respectful of my neighbors and things like that. But in terms of the little social cues that people use that make me personally miserable, I don't know what they are. And it's like a blessing to not.
Yes, I resonate with that so much because I realized we were living in Switzerland. We moved back to the US for a couple of years to like suburbia, bought a
Mhm.
house, all the things, and really tried to like go into like having raising a family in suburban America. And I realized very quickly like this is my nightmare. I don't get the social norms because we had spent so long abroad. Like we had basically
Yes.
grown up abroad in our 20s. We moved back, when we were 30. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, I don't get these rules. They don't make any sense to me.
They don't make any sense.
And I'm like an American that just no longer fits into America. And
Mhm.
I was like, we realized very quickly after we moved back, I was like, and we have to have a plan to move back to Europe because I fit in there. I in this
Mhm.
weird expat way. Like I know my place and I know how I want to act. And I also realized that when we lived in Germany and when we lived in Switzerland, I didn't fit into the norms there either, culturally all the time,
Mhm.
but I didn't care. And there is
Yes.
such a freedom. Like
Yeah.
again, you want to be like respectful of the culture,
Yes.
but at the same time, you just get the freedom to pursue the things that you want to pursue, hang out with the people that you want to hang out with, and there you get rid of all the extra stuff that you're just like,
Yes.
why are we doing this? Why do we have this
A
grade?
100,000%. The example I always use is I can remember I lived in a little suburb in Birmingham, but so it was like not all the way out. But when people would, if you had an old person on your block and they would go and bag all their leaves. And so you'd be walking and like that to me is the absolute there is nothing redeeming about this, right? You are taking something that breaks down naturally and you are putting it in plastic. You are spending city dollars to carry all the leaves from your trees to a landfill. You are taking away the habitat of all these different species. And the only reason to do it is because it's the norm. It's literally the only reason. And how do you unlearn that? Like I just it's a weird it's frustrating.
Yep, that's a great example because you're right. We don't really do that. I mean, in the same way. Yeah, it's I hadn't even thought of that.
Mm.
So I'm curious, like right now, I mean, imagine like you guys started this at a very political time. It's only gotten more political since 2022. What are you seeing right now? Like what are the trends that you're seeing from your clients on Expatsi? Are there certain countries that people are particularly interested? Are they actually like looking at their top 10 list and like following through with that? Or are they like, no, I heard about Portugal and therefore Portugal didn't make it on the top
Well,
10 and so
yeah.
moved to Portugal. Like, what are you, I mean, I'm just like so curious. Like,
Well, the funny thing is that like two-thirds of people get Portugal on their list. So it just reinforces because yes, they all want to move to Portugal. Everybody wants to move to Portugal. I've never seen anything like it. We do trips. We take people on scouting trips to Portugal, Mexico, Spain. We're adding Ecuador and Ghana. We have those trips available, and then we're hopeful to add some more. But
let's wait. Can we talk about that a little bit? So you guys
yes,
do these scouting trips. So like talk me through what that looks like for expatsy clients.
yeah. So, what we learned when we put our feet on the ground in Vancouver was, oh my God, this is not what it looked like online. I don't feel at home. I liked it. It was a beautiful vacation. I'd go back anytime, but it didn't feel like home. Then when I arrived in Merida, a place I'd never heard of in my whole life until TikTok, I we were here 1 hour and I was like, this is it. This is it. And there is something that you cannot get anywhere else but being on the ground. And it's vibes at the end of the day. Does this feel like home? So we, of course, talked
And
about it
it's
a lot.
vibes when you're not in a 5-star
Oh,
hotel in a resort, right?
100,000%.
Let's just start.
100,000%. Yes. So absolutely. So we started because we started a Facebook group. People were like, I'm going to take a trip like you did. We gave them a poll. Their first choices were Spain and Portugal. And Arielle, last year, I took 30 people to Spain and Portugal as their guide, and I had never been to either country. And they knew no one was tricked.
Yeah,
But I was
yeah.
like, listen, we're all in this together. I'm not going to charge you a lot, but you got to be game. And they have been half of them now work with Expats in some way because
Wow.
we just all bonded and they were so brave to do this with us when we had no idea where we were going. But the idea is we call it a seminar, but we eat and drink with immigration attorney, tax folks, finance folks, real estate folks, and use healthcare. And you get some presentations from them about what life is like, what the visas are, what you need to do. But then you sit and break bread and drink wine so that you can become friends, because that's a big piece of it. Is you don't know who to trust. Someone is asking you to send $3,000 to another country or $300,000 to another country, and you haven't met and you feel nervous. And so that's how we get started. Then each day we visit livable towns and neighborhoods. So my rule is no museum, no landmarks, no churches. It's not to say you don't happen upon one, but we don't go look at Sagrada Familia, right? And so we go and visit places where people like to live. We visit the market, we visit the pharmacy, and you can see real estate as well. So we'll show housing. It's not chosen for you specifically, of course, but it gives you an idea of this is what life is like here. Can I picture myself living in a place like this, or is it wrong? And to be honest, if the answer is I hate it, that to me is still a win,
Mm-hmm.
because for, you know, $3,000 to $5,000, you have figured something out before you spent 20,000 or more. And then the people really bond on the trip. Like that's meant to become your cohort so that you can continue cheering each other on as you go. So we started with Spain and Portugal. We've changed how, I don't go on the trips anymore unless sometimes, like, I'm hopeful to go on a couple in the fall. I'd like to go to Ecuador. And of course, I will pop into the one in Riviera Maya and Merida. But I have real experts who run them and manage it. It is, our 6 stages of moving abroad are ideation, which is just fantasy, right? And that's where all the emotional stuff comes in. Our 2 is planning, and that is where can I go and how do I get there? Stage 3 is exploration, and that's when the trips come into play, or you can go on your own. Stage 4 is paperwork. We all know what that is. Stage 5 is logistics. What am I going to do with all this stuff? How am I getting the Great Danes to, Berlin? And then stage 6 is settling in. That's the rest of your life, right? So that is learning language, finding community, joining the pickleball club, getting a new endocrinologist, all those things. And our goal is to support people at all 6 steps with either, recommendations for people we trust or tools that we put together. But we want to be there through people's entire journey. And we have a goal of moving 1 million Americans.
Wow. And how many are you up to now?
We don't know.
Oh,
That's why the app is happening.
okay. So this is the app, and you're going to be able. So right now you're doing this kind of process like one to one, and now the app
Yeah,
is going to really allow you to scale this. And I think you said the app is going to launch in November, correct?
that's right. So, for example, we've taken about 500 people on trips, but once they go on trips, if they start to work with the partners, then I may never know. And so I hear stories back, or people will come by TikTok and just say, "Hi, I'm living in Dubai, and it's all because of you. Thanks." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
You know,
Tell me more. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And so we don't know. So the other aspect of the app is that we'll be able to see where everyone is in the process and offer them help along the way. But essentially, it is an app that outlines every step, and there will be thousands of steps that you need to follow to move abroad, but one at a time. One at a time. You don't have to do all of it at once. Today, you just need to do this. And so it will be a hand holding tool. There'll be a free version for people to get started. Everybody who takes the Expatsi test will automatically have a membership, and that's the goal.
Oh, I love it. Great job. Great work. Okay, last question
Thank
for
you.
today. If someone is on the fence about moving abroad, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
So I think that they need to know why they are leaving and what they are looking for. If it is just, I got to get out of here, I get it. Everyone I talked to over the past year is in fight or flight. And one of the things that we talk about is you are trying to recreate a life that you spent 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years building. Every choice you made, what you named your kids, why you bought that dress, where your favorite place is for dinner on Friday night. And you have built this life. And now you're coming to me and you want to recreate it in 6 months in another language, in another hemisphere. And it's challenging, right? And so one of the things that we recommend is if you feel like you are doing all those things while running from a tiger, then let's just get you out from in front of the tiger first. And then you can start to solve all those things. So what we say is go wherever is easiest if you feel like that. Just get out and then solve where your perfect place is. Alternatively, if you don't feel like you're running from a tiger, then let's figure out what you are moving towards. Tell me your perfect day. Is it sipping a dry white wine over the Dodo River? Is it tacos at a street festival? What does that look like? And then let's work to get you there.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. And that's wonderful advice. And I think we had another guest on, Mikkel Weber, and she said, run towards something. And
Yes.
those words have stuck with me since she was a guest on the podcast. And I just think like that's exactly what you need to do. You can't just say, I want to leave because I don't like Trump. Well, you're always going to not like something. There's always going to be something to not like. I promise you. But, think about what you're going towards. Okay. So
Yes.
Jen, on that, I will say goodbye. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your expert insights here with our guests today.
Thank you so much, Arielle. It's been a delight.
The content shared in this podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. We encourage you to consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, or other licensed expert before making any decisions based on the topics discussed. Everyone's financial situation is unique, and personalized guidance from a trusted professional is the best way to ensure your choices align with your individual goals and circumstances.